Hey everybody. I'm starting a new piece and I don't actually even know what it is yet. But I realized as I was working on my sketches that I wanted to pause and talk a little bit about the thoughts that I'm having at this very early stage. So this is a painting that's not for any client. It's not for any specific project. And that can be a difficult place to begin because it's a completely open realm of possibilities. And in this particular case, I don't have a specific concept in my mind, but I do have a motive for the piece that I'm doing. So I'm starting to get back into doing conventions, and I'm going to be doing Dragoncon this year. It's going to be the first big show that I will be exhibiting at in nearly a decade. And I have been going through my entire body of work since going back to my earliest illustrations through the present day and really just kind of assessing, well, I'm going through and planning for how I want to present myself at this show and what I want to bring with me. And part of that is what is the identity that I want to present. And part of that is more commercially driven, thinking about what pieces would do well as prints. What do I want to bring besides, like, do I want to make some kind of book? Do I want to do stickers, pins, things like that? Just merchandising type of things, really. And that's really not typically in my mind when I'm creating my work. And I think it's interesting to go back and look through the work I've done, which was mostly intended for different purposes than that. Go back through it and think about it in those terms of, would this work for this or that? Or when I pull a bunch of pieces that I feel really strong, what is the personality or identity that they represent? And in doing all of this, one of the other things that I've never gotten into this before, but I intend to make some playmats to bring with me to the show. And going through my pieces, that's a pretty specific type of thing to make, I feel. And it's kind of like, it has a lot of the same needs as a print or something. It needs to have a strong kind of decorative statement to it, and it needs to be something that really has good story, really connects with the audience. A lot of the things that a strong cover piece might necessarily have. And then themed probably towards more kind of classic fantasy type stuff. I'm thinking about all of this, and I'm thinking, what is it that I want to do with this piece? And it's just interesting to approach from this point of view, because I'm also keeping in mind, what do I want to do that feels true to me? What do I want to... I I don't remember if I've talked about this in other videos or not, but when I was at the end of 2023, there was a period of time where I was not really getting any commercial commissions, and I was putting a lot of time. This is when I started getting my YouTube channel back up. This is when I started my Patreon, and I started doing non-commissioned paintings. And this was all motivated by this feeling of needing to be more visible and needing to be doing work that's not client dictated. In this particular case, because I didn't have any work that was client dictated to be doing, and made me realize I had taken a very long step away from personal work and that kind of thing, and I needed to get back to it. But I was also in a state of mind that it was really hard for me to think about what I wanted to do or to enjoy what I was doing. I was feeling very stressed and kind of panicked. And a lot of the work that I did, although I think some of it was pretty good and some of it that I really like, I had a hard time connecting with it from the point of view that I always like to bring to my work, which is satisfying me as the audience member, making myself kind of the primary audience and client for the piece, and hopefully other people will see the same thing in it that I see or that I'm trying to do. And it was hard to do that. I never like to try to second guess or predict what people want, but I was just in the state of mind that it felt almost impossible not to have that looming over whatever I was doing. And since then, work has picked up and I've gotten more, I don't know, more back to normal, I guess. I'm really enjoying the work that I'm doing right now. I've got 3 pieces that sketches just got approved for different clients that every single one of them I'm really excited about. And one of them in particular, I feel really good about the work that's happening right now. And I did a personal piece recently that I feel really good about that had no like motivation by commercial use or anything like that. And I'm feeling good about this stuff. And long term, I feel like these things are important. This is what makes work that stands up well over time. And so as I'm thinking about this piece that I want to do, which hopefully if I'm going to have to kind of get myself really moving on this to get it done in time, but I think I can, to have this as like one of the playmats that I bring with me to Dragoncon this year. I'm thinking about all of these things. This is kind of it it's not as coherent or concise as a client brief, and I don't have anyone to bounce ideas off of here. But I have a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about doing this, and going through all the work in my portfolio, looking at the stuff that I've done, things that I'm proud of, things that I feel I could have done differently or done better over all these years, really has me in this interesting headspace of, okay, like this is an opportunity to do something really cool, really fun, and that will be completely mine. And so that's really where I'm starting from. And I think I want to do, it's Dragoncon. I think I want to do a piece that involves a dragon. I haven't done a whole lot of that. I've had a few opportunities more recently to do some dragon related pieces, and I've been pretty happy with how they've gone. So I think that is probably going to feature in the piece. I was also thinking, I've done a number of pieces with cats, but I don't think I've ever really done like a showcase piece. And I love my cats. I love cats in general, and I think that they're fun to paint. And even if I don't do anything with a cat in this piece, my dragon is definitely going to be cat inspired. So this is all just kind of like in my head right now as I'm starting to get into the sketches. And I'm not totally sure where it's going to go, but I'm excited about it. And it really just felt to me like, wait, this might be a good one. This might be one that it's worth really trying to capture, not just all of the process steps, but also to capture the just what I'm going through as I'm doing it. I'm feeling the joy of it, and that's a good thing. And that's something that I don't think I could honestly say I was feeling 6 months ago on the things that I was working on, or 8 months ago. So I'm glad to be feeling that again. I think it's going to show. I think it's going to I think the work is going to be better for it. I've had a couple of days to poke around on these sketches for this next personal piece, and I think I'm pretty happy with it. Initially, this started, my thought was something that would work as a playmat, but also just a cool, like, classic fantasy piece. And so my parameters were pretty broad. I was thinking I'd like to do something with a dragon, and I may or may not include a figure in there. My original thought was that I might have a some type of warrior fighting the dragon or fighting with the dragon or something like that. And I started sketching on this, and as I was trying out different ideas and just playing around with compositions and things like that, it initially was kind of like a warrior with the dragon, and then I started drawing these sketches that were more of kind of like a warrior putting like a hand on the dragon's nose in a kind of like affectionate, almost like kind of like petting the dragon, and then that led into having a kind of like I think it's going to be like an overhead sort of view of a sleeping dragon with this figure kind of curled up and sleeping, nuzzled up against the dragon's face, and definitely heavily inspired by my cat. As I was arriving at that idea and sketching out some general, just kind of like shape arrangements and that sort of thing, it got me looking back through old photos of my cats and pulling out any photos of them when they're sleeping and really like curled up. I love, I think I have some photos with the chin kind of like resting on the foot kind of thing. And I'm not totally sure how that's all going to tie in or inform, but it's definitely inspiring, and emotionally, like, that is contributing to the piece, and it's helping. So it's going in a very different direction from where I originally thought, which I was initially looking for some kind of like badass image or like very iconic classic cover poster style cool dragon painting, and it's turning into this piece that's a much quieter moment and dealing with health issues with our pets. I think that might be contributing to this. We've been through a bit lately, and so I'm embracing that feeling of personal connection to the piece, and I'm excited about the direction that it's going. So I have some other work that is taking my attention in the immediate term. I think over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be pretty busy getting some paintings completed for deadlines and for clients. And I don't know how much I'm going to get to work on this in that time, but it's sometimes good to let things kind of sit on the back burner and then come back to it. I was away from this project a little bit longer than I expected. It's actually been a month since I've recorded the last videos, and in that time I've just been really wrapped up in deadlines and other projects. All that stuff has now been submitted, things are pending approval, things are completed, and I finally have some time to focus on this. And I don't have a lot of time going forward. Dragoncon is in something like 2 months, which is plenty of time to do the painting, but I also want this painting to be a playmat. I want to get playmats made for the show. The next step I needed to do here was to think about, well, so let me back up a second. So I went back through the sketchbook pages, and this thumbnail up here really continued speaking to me. And so from there, I opened up DAZ and started building in 3D using the available models that I've just kind of collected over the past couple of years that I've been working with that program. Because a lot of my process, my sketch process, is really woven into the reference process, whether it's photography or 3D, I do a lot of thinking from reaction and figuring things out, moving things around, trying things out. And that's one of the reasons why I like 3D, and in some ways why I feel like 3D has got some advantages over a model in the studio, because you have that time and flexibility to to experiment and try things out and not be under pressure of someone else's schedule. And you can also come back, like let's say I have been working with something and I feel really good about it, and then the next day or the next week I'm sitting down to take it to the next step and I realize, this might actually be interesting if I lower the camera, or if I move the lights around or something like that. And so that's one of the things about working with the 3D programs for reference that I really like. But when I'm using this model of a dragon, it is the tricky thing, I think, is not getting too attached, because when it starts off, it looks like this goofy dragon that's just kind of like whatever. But as I'm posing it and lighting it and setting up my camera and everything, I come to really like, I'm feeling like, yes, this is just what I want. It's looking just right. And it gets to a certain point where then it's time to take it forward. And I've actually become really attached to just how it looks. And that makes it harder for me to translate or reimagine it into a different type of creature design. So I did a sketch from the 3D that I put together. I tried some things when I was sketching. I tried to, I was doing a lot of, they're very minor kind of changes to the shape of some of these things, but one of them I was trying to give kind of like a cat's lip, where it's like kind of split and tucked up where it meets the nose. It wasn't really working. It was looking too feline, and so I ended up going with more of a little beak, and I added some horns, which are kind of reminiscent of ears. Initially I had them kind of pointed more forward, wasn't feeling that, tilted them back. And I put some striping on. My intention is to have some striping in the kind of like the scales and the skin of the dragon. And this was kind of enough for me to just play with it and figure out how, and this will be a good guide for me when I transfer this to my surface, which so then brings me to that. Initially, my plan was to do the piece 13.5 by 24, which is the same size as a playmat. I don't normally like doing one-to-one if I'm making something that I know is going to be reproduced at a particular size. It's always my preference to paint larger, and it'll scale down really nicely. The normal size that I would use for if I was doing a cover would be 16 or 18 by 24, depending on the proportions of the book. And so for that reason, I was thinking 13.5 by 24. That seems like a good size for this piece. And especially because in this piece, the dragon's face is so dominant. It's quite large in the picture. The figure, on the other hand, is a little bit small, but not so small that I'm worried about it. But after prepping this surface, and just to kind of give a sense of the scale of it, I was looking at this and I was thinking this would probably work fine, but I think the piece would be better, bigger. So I woke up this morning and prepped a second surface, which is 24 by 30, no, yeah, is that right? 18 by 32, that's what it is, 18 by 32. And I think that's about 33% bigger than 13.5 by 24. And this feels to me like, this feels good. This is a nice size. The dragon's head is going to be huge on here, which is great because that'll let me really get into the textures and the details of that. And then the figure, I know the figure is going to be a very comfortable working size. And I'm really excited about this piece. I think it's going to look great. And this is a little bit of a weird proportion. I think it's it's a 9:16 proportion, which is the same as a widescreen TV. So it's not a strange proportion to look at. It's actually something that we're very used to. So it will have a sort of cinematic look, but it will be awkward to frame. I mean, not like it'll be a difficult... It's not a size that I have frames sitting around my studio for. A lot of the pieces I do, I have go-to sizes, and that means that when I go to a LuxCon or whatever, I can just, swap around frames and see what looks good on what piece. And so unfortunately, I won't be able to do that with this one. I'm going to have to order something special for this, but I think it's going to be worth it. I was thinking, I could have added some space to the top and bottom, or I could have gone wider and done a 1:2 proportion. I do actually have 18:36 frames from a personal series. I did a bunch of paintings at 18:36. Could have done either of those things, but just when I was playing around with the composition, I started trying to add a little bit top and bottom or side to side, and it didn't look as good. I just fell so much in love with the composition that I created in 9:16, and so that's what I'm going to go with. So my lights just flickered. There is a storm coming in, so I'm going to sign off here before I lose power. All right, next up is translating this onto the surface. I'm going to just project this and put my sketch onto the surface, and then I'll be ready to get into the paint. I'm just recording some audio as I set up to paint here, which I can talk a little bit about what I'm doing and may or may not use that, but also there is a real thunderstorm going on outside. I don't know how much of that is going to come through, but normally I'd put on a podcast or listen to some music or put on a movie that I've seen a bunch of times while I'm working. It's nice to have some company in the studio like that, something to occupy your mind, something to think about. But right now I'm just enjoying listening to this storm. And it's nice and relaxing to listen to while I work.